All right, I'm showing 6 o'clock. So I'd like to welcome everybody, all the attendees to the Greater Vernon Chamber All Candidates Forum for Vernon Monashee. Those on Zoom who've attended, you have the opportunity to ask your questions via the question and answer chat box, which you can do throughout the forum here, and we will do our best to get around to the questions throughout. Thanks to Castanet, who are also live streaming on their website, so people can watch it live. This forum is scheduled to run until 8 p.m. Or sooner, depending on questions asked. My name is Dan Prue. I'm the General Manager for the Greater Vernon Chamber of Commerce. We are a nonprofit membership-based business support organization, and we are extremely proud to be offering this forum for our members and the community to have their questions and issues addressed by the candidates. I also want to thank our candidates for joining us today, their commitment to being part of the forum, as well as their desire to serve the Vernon Monashee riding. I'll introduce them in alphabetical order. So we have Kyle Delfing from the Conservative Party, Eric Foster from the BC Liberals, Harwinder Sandhu from the NDP, and Kelly Westgate from the Green Party. Stop sharing my screen so we can see everybody. Welcome again. I'll be moderating. So I think we'll just start off with giving you your 3 minutes where you can discuss your party's platform at will. And we will begin that in alphabetical order. You'll have 3 minutes. When there's 20 seconds left remaining, I will hold up this sign. Everybody can see that clearly, I'm sure. I'll try and wave and get your attention. And then when time is running out, I will interrupt you verbally. I don't assume there will be any issues after that. I don't want to have any problems here like Chris Wallace did. Luckily, this is Zoom. I do have a mute button if I have to use it, but I don't expect to. So starting in alphabetical order, we can start with Kyle. Kyle, if you'd like to take your 3 minutes, I will begin timing when you start.
Thank you, Dan. I'd just like to say thank you to the BC Fruit Growers Association and the Chamber of Commerce for having us here tonight. My name is Kyle Delfing. I'm running with the Conservative Party to be your MLA. I'm a blue-collar businessman living here in Vernon, and I've been driven to politics as I feel it's about time for a change here in BC politically. I'm sure as many of you would agree. For too long, the NDP and the Liberals have been tossed back and forth into office, promising one thing and doing a complete opposite, with no one to hold them to account until the next election. It must stop. The BC Conservative Party is here to hold the next government accountable to us, the people of British Columbia. We have 18 policy proposals to steer British Columbia in a direction that'll benefit all of us, the young, old, poor, rich, and everyone in between. We will encourage the government to do better with its delivery of healthcare. We know that being proactive in the delivery of healthcare will actually save us money in the long run and keep British Columbians healthier for longer. We're also looking at encouraging the government to hold Crown corporations to account to make sure that they're charging a fair price for their services or for their goods. We would like to look at abolishing the ICBC monopoly. The way we would do this is by opening up the market, but also turning ICBC up into a co-op style system. Now, in regards to agriculture, we're starting to see a lot of land speculation in the ALR, which is starting to drive prices up. So the BC Conservative Party is hoping that we can encourage the government to review the ALC and see if we can serve our agricultural producers' interests better by reducing the cost of land for them so they can reduce the cost of business and thus passing the price down to us consumers. Another thing that BC Conservatives believe in is maintaining law and order. We'll be supporting our law enforcement agencies, whether it means increasing funding to certain aspects, increasing staffing to certain aspects. We will also encourage a change to how we protect British Columbians' private property rights, whether that be through changes to how we deal with strata, insurance, or also including our many gun owners. Because the BC Conservative Party would like to see a little bit of provincial autonomy. We know that the government of British Columbia could control the administration, application, and interpretation of the Firearms Act. I think that that's something that would benefit a lot of people in this neighborhood. We have a few small gun stores and they seem to do very well for the population that we have. We would also encourage the development of energy resource projects. Oh, thank you energy resource projects in a responsible manner that would that would keep our environment clean, which will ensure we enrich the lives of British Columbians. If you vote for the Conservatives, you will have a voice to hold the government accountable. British Columbia and the people of this community have offered a lot to me. I'd like to give back by being a fresh set of eyes and ears. Thank you.
Thank you. And continuing in alphabetical order, Eric, you have the floor. Your 3 minutes will start when you begin talking.
Well, thank you very much, Dan, and thanks to the Chamber and the fruit growers for putting this on. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Eric Foster, and I am representing the BC Liberal Party. Prior to being your MLA, I worked in forestry as a technician, and then I taught forestry at Charles Boom Secondary in Lumby. I served our community and local government for 18 years as a councillor, mayor, and director of the regional district. In 2009, I was elected as your MLA, and I've had the honor to work with many organizations in the community on a number of important projects, such as the Vernon Jubilee Hospital expansion, the rail trail, the new MRI machines, various senior housing projects, and housing for the low income and homeless. And I continue to work with individual constituents every day to help them with what matters most to them, whether it's helping them navigate their way through government programs or listening to what their personal concerns are. And this is not an election that we should be in. It's unnecessary and poses risks to our community, in our efforts to keep the virus in check. The government was stable. It was working as a minority government should with the cooperation of the Green Party. In March, 12 MLAs from across all party lines attended the legislature and passed a $5 billion COVID recovery plan. That's unprecedented. The cooperation plan supported by all parties was further to the remarkable leadership of Dr. Bonnie Henry in responding to this pandemic. But instead of continuing this cooperation, the NDP chose to selfishly call a snap election during this difficult time for everyone. The BC Liberals know British Columbians are hurting, and we had challenges before COVID, and people are worried now about their future. And in my office, for example, we used to meet with people regularly. Now, Zoom is the norm. From meetings with stakeholders on various issues like social planning to great community events like the Canada Day celebrations and important fundraisers that we attended throughout the year, celebrations like Canada Day. My wife and I probably spent the majority of weekends at different fundraising events and events in the community. And it was at these community events that we had the opportunity to touch base with people and listen to what their concerns were in the community. This pandemic will end. And when it does, we will need a responsible but bold economic plan, and no party is better equipped to lead this province in that recovery than the BC Liberals. You've likely heard our leader, Andrew Wilkinson, talk about some of our vision, removing the PST for a year and then keeping it at 3% the following year as the economy recovers, opening car insurance to the private sector to end the 40-plus year.
I missed your 20-second mark.
And tonight, I look forward to sharing more of the BC Liberals' views. And I look forward to your questions and hearing from you, and thank you very much.
Thank you again, Eric. Harwinder, you have the floor. Time will start when you begin.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Harwinder Sandhu, your BC NDP candidate. First, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Okanagan Indian Nations. I am a mother, a registered nurse for over 15 years, and I currently work at Vernon Jubilee Hospital as a patient care coordinator. Being a nurse, I care passionately about people, but I want to tell you a story that motivated me to be in politics. I lost my first husband to cancer. It wasn't the cancer I lost him to. It was misdiagnosis for 2 years. due to lack of the resources under BC Liberals. And us having to navigate through resources, first we were getting tossed back and forth, and that's all due to lack of resources. By the time the diagnosis was made, with my advocacy being a nurse, it was too late. So 2 little girls lost their father. And this is why I strongly stand with the BC NDP government, because there are people, they say, putting money in people is waste of money, and where will the money come from? Maybe for some of you, improving services is waste of money, but for many, it's you can save lots of loved ones and their lives and their family dynamics. And putting money into people is always a great investment. Over the years, I have listened to people and heard their concerns. I have worked in many communities in order to deal with those concerns. Now I want to become the MLA for Vernon Monashee so I can voice those concerns in the government in Victoria. I want to be part of John Horgan's government because it has been effective in fighting the COVID virus, but the fight is not over. I am stepping up to help in the continuing battle against the virus. As a nurse on the COVID unit ward at the hospital, I know how threatening this virus is. I'm offering my experience to help the government in this fight. For the environment, I want to help John Horgan's government implement the Clean BC plan, which was jointly developed by George Heyman and the former Green Party leader, Dr. Andrew Weaver. I want it to work for everyone, and it will be a major part of our economic recovery plan as we come out of this COVID crisis. John Horgan's recovery plan will rebuild BC's economy. In the next 3 years, the government's plan will invest $3 billion in addition to the existing $23 billion projects. The NDP government will build new schools, hospitals, roads in accord with the government's climate action plan. It will create more childcare spaces and improve transit system. It will create 18,000 more jobs.
Thank you, Harwinder. That's time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, and over to you, Kelly. You have the floor. Your time will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you so much to the Chamber as well and the Fruit Growers Association for putting on this forum with such short notice and adapting to the changes that we've all had thrown at us this year. It was great to see some of you in person yesterday at the Chamber luncheon, and I'm sure everyone was thrilled to socialize a bit again. For those that don't know me, I work with Spa Hills Compost, the Okanagan's only food waste composting facility, and we help businesses all over the valley from Penticton to Kamloops reduce waste through organics diversion. I'm a certified permaculture designer. I also freelance with Spring Creative doing voiceovers and video production. I teach some courses at Okanagan College and have sat on numerous local nonprofit boards. I'm running because none of the other parties are treating the climate emergency with the urgency that it requires. We need to have an environmental lens on everything we do from this point forward if we wish to live on a livable planet for our children. This is where we're at now, and we must move beyond business as usual into something truly regenerative and equitable. When we think about business going forward, we have to think about the effect on the land, the water, and in the air, because these are the things that sustain us and promote good health. And what 2020 has taught us is that if we don't have our health, we have nothing. While we may personally want to travel the world and go on wild adventures, the current situation requires that we stay put for now and possibly a while longer. The opportunity in this is that we start to notice that we live in a beautiful place that must be protected if we want to stay here long term. If we log all the trees, if we pollute the air, if we taint the water, we'll have to leave and find somewhere else. But if everywhere else has been putting the environment on the back burner too, what will be left? So in moving forward, I ask all of you to consider how your business affects the natural world around us on a day-to-day basis. Is your business essential? Is it regenerative? Is it based in positive solutions? And if not, what can you personally do within that business to shift it into something essential? If elected as your BC Green MLA, I will work with you towards a community that supports one another, feeds one another, helps one another, and innovates our way through these challenges together. I feel with the right energy and attitude, we can tackle these and come out the other end with something much better, healthier, and more sustainable than we currently have. As entrepreneurs out there in the business community, I know you have the creativity to come up with new ways of doing things. And although some businesses are struggling and some sadly may even fail, I believe that new businesses and ideas will flourish and they will improve and inspire the next generation of leaders. We're living through historic times and times of great changes. And I, for one, am comfortable with change. And I want to help you become comfortable with that as well. As Einstein said, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. And Darwin said it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. October 24th, I invite you to vote your heart, vote green, and let me be your voice in Victoria.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate everyone and their introductory statements. We'll move on to questions from the Chamber of Commerce members and the BC Fruit Growers Association. You'll each have 2 minutes to answer questions. Again, I will give you the 20-second warning. From this point forward, you will have a maximum of 2 rebuttals should you choose to use them. If you would like to use your rebuttal after somebody has finished their time, please just try and get my attention and I will mark it on the score sheet and give you 2 minutes for your rebuttal. We will start with Eric, as we'll just move through the alphabetical order in a different way again. And this first question is posed from the BC Fruit Growers Association, who we were thankful to partner with. So BC has the lowest financial support for agriculture based on GDP in Canada. How would your party address the impact of low agricultural support in BC? And Eric, your time will start when you begin.
Thank you. A few years ago, when the BC Liberals were in government, we made some major changes to the funding for agriculture in the province. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in certain areas, millions of dollars across the province. Made a huge difference, and we had an ongoing plan in place, which has been axed over the last 3 years. Or sorry, that's not fair. It's been reduced drastically over the last 3 years. So, you know, we were successful in this election. We would we would go back to the original plan that we had, and over a period of time, increasing the funding to the tree fruit growers. We initiated the replant program for orchardists, encouraging them to replant the low water use, new high valued dwarf trees to increase their productivity, minimize the water use, and increase their viability. So these were plans we put into place, and we would certainly continue with the improvements and the increases to help for especially for the fruit growers. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, we will move over to Harwinder. Harwinder, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm okay with that. Great question. Actually, I have high respect for our farmers because my dad was farmer. I grew up in a farmer family on a farm, and I know how hard our farmers work. And it does bother me when they're not compensated fairly. But Lana Popham, our Minister of Agriculture, have done a great job. There's a lot of accomplishments, but more needed to be done. And I will be being your MLA, advocating for the funding that you all deserve. And I'm happy with some of the initiatives like Buy BC, Grow BC, Feed BC, but that needs to be implemented in full force. And also I was happy when our Minister of Agriculture announced farmer markets as essential business, which our farmers were able to still have some income coming during the COVID. As I mentioned, as your elected MLA, because this farming and farmer families are so near and dear to my heart, and having personal touch, I will be strongly advocating for the more funding and support our farmers deserve.
Thank you very much, Harwinder. Over to you, Kelly. Your time will start when you begin.
Thank you. Well, obviously, agriculture is something very near and dear to my heart. As a permaculture designer, food security is one of my main concerns going forward. When you look at what's happening in California right now and all the way up the West Coast with the fires, agricultural land is certainly, being threatened at the moment. I've been involved with the Land Table Network here in Vernon, obviously through my work in composting. I believe that, farming in general needs to go through some changes as well. We've done conventional farming and it's worked very well for a period of time, but what we need to look at now is long-term sustainability of soils. The BC Greens have a plan to incentivize more land for food production. We also would like to set up local processing facilities and incentivize small scale farms and shift more towards regenerative agriculture. So looking at practices such as food forestry, polycultures, moving away from monocultures, using compost in soils. Obviously out here it's very dry, so to retain moisture in the soils, we really need to protect our water sources. Also creating a publicly owned agricultural land bank for farmers to be able to lease land and have access to land. Obviously land prices are very, very high to get into. And we're going to incentivize these agroecological farming practices such as regenerative farming. So looking at a different way of doing things, but also supporting farmers in those changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And over to you, Kyle.
Thank you. The BC Conservative Party has been looking at agriculture from a few different aspects. And as Kelly was saying, the high farmland prices due to speculation for alternative uses is one of the things we've been looking at. We believe that if we look into the ALC and see if we can get it free from improper political interference or inappropriate influence, that maybe we might be able to preserve land prices or even have them come down a little bit for those farmers who are trying to get into it and for the farmers who are trying to expand. Another thing is to open the market sectors such as orchards, vineyards, and vegetables and livestock. The BC government really has to walk the talk when it comes to making a level playing field for ranchers and orchardists and all the other agricultural industry that we have. And BC has a vast array of agriculture industry. We go from grain farming, fruit farming, we got, like I said, vineyards. Now, the other thing we would like to do, obviously there's a national carbon tax, but we still have the BC carbon tax. If we can eliminate that, that might take a couple dollars off the cost of doing business. And it'd be better to actually regulate emissions and regulate our way into the Green New Era or whatever we want to get into, rather than charging a carbon tax, because it's not helping families at the dinner table and it's not helping ranchers at their production. We also want to see ongoing full participation with the federal government in all federal and provincial programs, including 5-year Growing It Forward program to keep BC farmers and ranchers on equal footing with those in other provinces. We're going to ensure that the province fully participates in all federal and provincial programs to keep BC farmers and ranchers on equal footing, and initiate an internal review of the triggering policies for access to the federal and provincial disaster programs to ensure BC programs remain competitive with those of other provinces. So all in all, we have agriculture in mind, and we have many more policies to talk about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyle. Moving on to our next question. Businesses that have payroll over 1.5 million, but less than 50 employees have been impacted by the employer's health tax. Will your government raise the threshold for this tax or eliminate it? And we will start with Harwinder.
Can you repeat, sorry, the 50, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Businesses that have payroll over 1.5 million, but less than 50 employees have been impacted by the employer's health tax. Will your government raise the threshold for this tax or eliminate it?
Just one second. So our plan is to, sorry, I was just looking in my platform recently. It is, we will continue with the way we have with the employer's tax because it pays towards the services that we provide to people, but it won't affect businesses with 500,000 payroll. 1.5, we don't have any, in my understanding, plan to increase existing one. It's 15% refundable tax credit that we will give, in fact, to the payroll, and 300 million recovery grant to support around 15,000 small and medium-sized businesses that have been hit hard by COVID-19. So we will continue with the tax, the health employers tax, but not increasing it.
Thank you, Harwinder. Kelly?
Yes. So as many of you know, some of us have been on the campaign trail for 2 weeks now, and there are some things that we unfortunately haven't had time to get to. So what I can say is that the Greens were instrumental in getting the MSP out of the hands of, personal paying, me paying, you paying personally. So I think that's created a lot of relief for the average person on the street. I will have to look into it and get back to you on that question in terms of the payroll tax. So I appreciate the question.
Thank you, Kelly. Kyle, over to yourself.
With the Conservative Party, it's not something we've specifically looked at as well. We do want to review all the existing tax programs and see how we can better structure them to serve the citizens of British Columbia better, as well as the businesses, because we know that no matter where the tax is, eventually everybody in this province is going to end up paying a portion of it. That being said, we don't have any immediate plans. Thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. And over to you, Eric.
Well, thank you very much. Let's be very clear about this. When the government removed the MSP premiums, the first year they charged the employer health tax and MSP. They doubled up. It's $500,000. If you have payroll over $500,000, you pay the employer health tax based on your $500,000. If you think about that, if you're a small business with 15 to 20 employees, they're making $25,000 to $40,000 a year, you're paying the employer health tax. So the committee that the government struck to look at eliminating the MSP came back with some suggestions. One of the suggestions was do not replace it with an employer payroll tax, which is what turned around and did. Remember, our medical is not free. We've gone from paying MSP premiums to paying taxes. If an employer has a payroll tax to pay, he must pass that on to his customers. Municipalities must pass that on to their taxpayers. This is not free. This is costing everyone in the province money out of their pockets on a daily basis. So on a go-forward basis, we certainly have to look at it. It's become a huge income stream for the government, but it's unfair taxation on business.
Thank you, Eric. Moving on to our next question. What additional steps are required to create additional childcare spaces and ensure that childcare operators and staff are compensated fairly? Kelly, you get to start this one off.
Yes, this is a great question, and it definitely relates to employers and employees. Obviously, with COVID, things are very tenuous, and things can change on the turn of a dime at the moment. So in terms of the childhood education, the BC Greens have been advocating for free childcare up to 25 hours for children under 3 years old, which would obviously give a great relief to parents. We would also like to see the childcare issue of children under 3 being moved onto the Ministry of Education and having early childhood education. It's been shown to have many benefits to start that process early. So allowing those children to just start a little bit earlier and freeing up that time for parents as well. And for fair wages and creating more spaces in terms of infrastructure. So, some buildings for more childcare, making sure that those that are working in childcare are making a fair wage and that they are, certified as educators and paid as such, because they are vital in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Over to you, Kyle.
Childcare is definitely a tricky subject. It's when it comes down to making it more affordable, you're looking at the rents that the facilities are paying, you're looking at the wages, the certifications, etc. We don't have a specific policy here at the Conservative Party, but again, our policy is to encourage a review of how all our tax dollars are spent amongst the community and see if we can utilize anything in healthcare, childcare, education in a better way. We know that there's no such thing as free childcare. Everybody is paying tax dollars or taxpayer dollars supporting every single program. We would have to make sure that when we review these programs, we would utilize the statistics of our demographics to see who needs childcare in Vernon versus Burnaby, right? And maybe right now the blanket policies that the other parties are proposing aren't actually going to get us our best bang for our dollar. We need to spend our dollars wiser on childcare. We just can't keep throwing more money at it and hoping that it's going to get better. It's getting more expensive every time we try that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Eric?
Thanks, Dan. Well, and as Kyle just said, it's a massive issue. It's a huge expense. And again, if the taxpayers are paying the bill, the public is paying the bill. That's where the money comes from. So we were promised in the last election, the province was promised that we were going to have $10 daycare. We had a few pilot projects. $10 daycare is not doable. They did it in Quebec, and it's just a huge failure. So one of the things that has always been in place is subsidies for low-income families, and I've lobbied to have the threshold for subsidies raised a little, but the secret here is we need more spaces. There's no question about it. We need to build more buildings, more private, more public. I think it's the school system could be used. Add space on existing schools for preschool and after school programs. The buildings are there, the support staff are there, and I think it could be done for less money per space than standalone buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And over to you, Harwinder.
Yes, so I would have to disagree with a couple of our candidates because, again, we're mistaking. Investing in our children and investing in early childhood education and childcare is a huge and worthwhile investment because that's what shapes any country or province's future. When you leave kids with latchkey and then they're later on when people are trying to have to work to make ends meet and kids don't have that education or that nurturing that they need, and that's when we see the rise in mental health services. Later on, then that leads to other problems, whether it's addictions or their coping mechanism. So this is the best investment. We need to think outside the box by lifting people and investing some money, including BCNDP's plan, $10 childcare. You're forgetting that you're putting more mothers and parents, even single fathers, into workforce, which generates money itself. If I have looked and done a lot of research, and program in Quebec is not fail. In fact, it's working really well. And being a mother, I know how important it was for my two daughters when I was raising them as a single mother after losing my first husband to find that proper childcare. In healthcare, nurses, we are long shift workers, and we are desperate for proper childcare daycares, because if we had those resources for us, we would be putting more hours into healthcare, and a lot of us wouldn't be working short because a lot of times we cannot pick up extra shifts to help patient care, and we end up working short because there is a lack of childcare and spaces. I am so delighted that Coldstream is getting 2 new childcare centers, which is a great investment. And then also BCNDP has created 20,000 new childcare spaces. Over 33,000 families are already paying $10 a day. And we are committed to expand further on this program. And I think this would be the best investment we can.
Thank you, Harwinder. Moving on to our next question. What is your position on increased community-based mental health services including local residential treatment for low-income residents and reimbursement for individuals seeking private addictions treatment. And we will start with Kyle.
The BC Conservative Party is geared up towards reviewing how we administer healthcare. We know that there are many shortcomings with the blanket policies we have. Now, as far as mental health goes, we would definitely be reviewing how we administer the services. We would like to see our tax dollars working better for British Columbians. We know if we were investing in people with mental disabilities today, that we were going to be helping ourselves save money and save lives in the future. A lot of these people want to live independent lives. It would be nice to invest into that, to have them living independently, but supervised enough that they're able to live a fulfilling life into their 60s and 70s like everybody else, without getting diabetes and other problems that may come on. Doing a little bit of reading today actually on the topic, and I was quite intrigued to find out that there's more need out there for specific care for people with intellectual disabilities than we're offering from the current NDP government. And I think that our plan to review how we're spending tax dollars on healthcare might be an opportunity for us to place those dollars better into the community. Because like Harwinder was saying, investing into our people is a good idea. But when you make an investment, you want to make the right investment so you get the best return for your dollar, not just getting 3%, but maybe 10%. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, moving over to Eric.
Oh, thanks, Dan. We have seen over the last number of years, and especially certainly through this pandemic, the rise in mental health breakdowns, overdoses, addictions, when people are afraid to even come to a hospital for fear, and the fears weren't well-founded, but they were there. We're proposing additional work in the mental health and addiction areas. We need wraparound services. We need services for folks who have addictions, mental health issues, combinations of which is prevalent, but wraparound services, housing, hospitalization, clinics, with full services, 24/7 wraparound service. And we and with the addiction, and with, like as I said, comes with mental health problems. There's no one size fits all. You know, there are people that feel that safe supply is the answer to all addiction problems. There are some people, without question, that safe supply will be the answer, and possibly for the rest of their lives. But there's a great number of people, given the proper opportunities for recovery, can lead healthy, happy, productive lives. And that's the secret. That's that full service wraparound, be it housing or treatment if they're still living in their own homes, or that they can come for help. And the stigma that's attached to both addictions and mental health, which go hand in hand, we need to. This is a disease. This isn't a criminal behavior. It's a disease. Addiction is a disease, and with the proper services and opportunities for people that are addicted and have mental health issues, if they feel that they can come forward. And the question was about helping to finance people to go to private facilities. I absolutely support that. The more people we can get into recovery, the better off we'll be as a society, and in the long run, the investment will do better. Thanks, Dan.
Over to you, Harwinder.
Yes. So this question again, so close to me, working in healthcare and passionate about mental health and healthcare in general. I see the firsthand effects when we have emergency beds occupied with people with mental health problems and waiting for beds in psych or the treatment facilities. But I have seen the improvement since the BC NDP have taken over. I'm happy to share that all of you know that we are the first and only province in Canada to start mental health ministry. And Minister Judy Darcy did a fabulous work. It was only 3 years, 3.5 years, and we're committed to do much more. Under that work, I am happy that urgent care centers were able to offload some of the lineups we have in Emerge. And then we have mental health substance use teams, which are their nurses, doctors working together. So that helped a lot. Again, my personal advocacy, when I ran in federal election too, my commitment was to community that I would be advocating to bring a detox and treatment center within the Okanagan, somewhere central, because right now we don't have anything closer. There are times there is one in Prince George or closer to, and it's a long, long wait list. Again, investing in people, it could be anybody, it could be your child or your brother. Nobody grew up thinking, oh, I'm gonna be addict or I'm gonna have mental health. It's not fair when people judge and think that that group of people should be forgotten or we don't need, it's our tax dollar. It's not, it's our people at the same time. So I'm very passionate. And when you have the experience in the government with the feedback, which I do, then it's so much easier to convince the government to bring those resolutions and those resources to the community. So I will be using all the expertise, knowledge to have my side. And to represent my
Thank you, Harwinder.
Thank you.
And Kelly, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, also an issue that is quite near and dear to my heart. I sadly lost a family member to mental health issues this summer during COVID. And I'm very happy to say that the BC Greens have a comprehensive plan for this issue. Just this week, Sonia First to Know, our leader, announced a $1 billion investment over 4 years, which will include a number of comprehensive initiatives. 10 years ago, the BC government estimated that the costs of mental health and addiction problems cost us $6.6 billion a year. So we are going to implement accessible treatment options for anxiety and depression. We certainly do support a harm reduction approach and do believe in a safe supply. We need to, get people that are suffering into treatment when they are ready for treatment. We also are going to have a public information campaign to increase the understanding of these issues. We're going to invest in facilities and detox beds and protect funding that already exists, and also develop a loneliness strategy and implement that as well. It's very important that we get early intervention and we have community-based options that are available for people where they're at now. And also a fundamental piece of the Green Platform is a guaranteed livable income. So many problems can be solved if we just had a safe landing point where people can afford to pay their basics for food and home and start with safety from that angle. That's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Moving on to the next question. Early closures have negatively impacted restaurants and pubs. Do you support shifting away from this one-size-fits-all policy to focus on businesses who break the rules? And we will start with Eric.
Sorry about that. I thought I was second. We have often questioned the one-size-fits-all. I'm certainly never questioning Dr. Henry's leadership in this COVID pandemic management attack, if you will. She's done a tremendous job. But we did, question the sort of the whole province. You have areas that with very, very low caseloads and others with high. So and I'm a proponent of if you can't obey the rules, and if you look what Dr. Henry did with the banquet halls and so on, it's unfortunate that there were a few breaking the rules, and she closed them all down. It was very unfortunate, but that's where the problems were. And the problems also existed, in the private parties and hotels and so on. We saw a major outbreak in Kelowna because of it. But I think about closing the bars in Vancouver, and the bars that were doing the job, they had the social distancing, they had the plexiglass up, and there was a big party out on the sidewalk outside of one of them, and so they closed the whole industry down, if you will. So I think painting everybody with the same brush is always an issue. And I really do think that individual cases should be looked at strongly. If people break the rules, I have no issue whatsoever with putting a lock on the door, none, because they're not listening and people get sick and die because people don't listen. But punishing people that have done the work and invested in things like the plexiglass and half the patrons and so on should be rewarded, not punished. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Harwinder?
Yes, so I highly respect Dr. Henry and Dr. Adrian Dix. They have done a great job, and working on a COVID unit, I know how important it is for us to be cautious and take these precautions. It's fair, no, it is not. And it was unprecedented. But if those implementations were not in place, we wouldn't be in the shape we are, which whole world, not just Canada, even countries I have families in, Europe, Asia, they talk about and give examples how BC handled a COVID crisis. Again, it did have, economy did get hit, but longer we take to comply with the rules, the longer we will be in it. Yes, Mr. Foster said that it's few people, but the problem is somebody healthy could be walking alongside you and no symptoms, but they could be still shedding COVID virus. That's why it was important. But BCNDP does have a robust plan for pandemic recovery by investing more money into small businesses, as I mentioned briefly in my opening speech. From that money, more than 15,000 small to medium businesses who were hardest hit by the COVID will be benefited from this funding announcement and from this support. I really hope everybody play safe and then we can get over this pandemic. So, Dr. Henry, again, they've done a phenomenal job, and we as a government need to continue supporting our economy recovery, which we have a robust and great platform. I think we're the only party with the platform as of now. It just came 2 days ago. So we do have that wonderful plan with more money and funding to support. So thank you.
Thank you, Harwinder. Over to you, Kelly.
Thank you. First, I want to say, I work with a lot of restaurants and bars, and I empathize with you. This has been so hard, changing rules all the time, and it sucks. Like, there's no other way to say it. Having said that, every pandemic in history has had a second wave, and the second wave has always been worse than the first. The BC Greens are an evidence-based party. We certainly support the advice of Dr. Bonnie Henry, and she's been doing such a fantastic job that I have friends in Europe who say they've heard of her, and they know how well we're doing here, and it's not by accident. So we have taken the precautions that are necessary. And, I also empathize with young people. I mean, you're in your 20s, you want to go out and you have a good time in your 30s. But the evidence suggests that, in a louder environment with more alcohol, inhibitions are going to go down, and it's just not worth the risk for public health to have a second wave. It's not worth it for our nurses and our doctors in the healthcare system. They are working so hard, they're exhausted, they don't need this. Just so that people can stay out another hour or two at the bar. So there are, other ways that you can do this. I encourage you to get creative. But we certainly do understand and empathize and know that, we just need to stick with what we're doing for now, and we'll get through it. And, once a vaccine is available, things can change. So I just appreciate everything that everybody's done so far and the sacrifices that we've all had to make during this time. But the evidence shows that certain places and certain activities are more risky than others. And so 2020 is all about risk management. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And over to you, Eric.
I think I was first. Better let Kyle go.
My mistake.
Thanks,
Yes,
Eric.
sorry, Kyle. Your turn.
Thanks, Dan. All right, so do I agree with it? Not at all. There shouldn't be a blanket policy. What is it trying to achieve? It's trying to keep us apart after 10 p.m. I'm not sure about the other candidates at the table here, but myself, I am in my 30s, and I do find myself frequenting the backwoods here, Cretan Valley, Harris Creek, Bardoff, Becker, King Eddy, you name it. I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with those areas, Rainbow Falls, Sugar Lake, Greenbrush Lake. I could go on all summer long. I was at a lot of these places, and I can tell you for a fact, it's been the busiest summer I've seen out there in all those places in a very long time, better part of a decade. So if we're trying to keep people apart and in controlled environments, we're definitely not keeping them in controlled environments. We are keeping them apart from the people that can control them. Personally, myself, I like to support restaurants. Most of my days end around 9:30 at night. Sometimes it's a little late to cook, especially in our hot Okanagan summers. So I found myself going to Mr. Mike's when it was finally opened up. I don't mind myself a little scotch here and there. When the scotch went away, it's harder to go. You know, it's not worth just the drink and everything, but it's the experience. You know, you're going to a restaurant, you're going there to socialize a little bit, and having a little bit of spirits is nice. What I noticed when she went with this blanket policy again in the fall is all these places that I named that were super busy in the spring, they're busy again. People are on their 4x4s, people are out in the backwoods drinking and driving, having a good time. So I'm not sure how much safer we've made our communities by making these blanket policies, driving people to drinking in their basements, hanging out with their friends in their garages, in their backyards, in the backwoods. But I don't think they're well thought through. I think Dr. Henry's an esteemed professional and I respect her. But if we're going to be going and saying, hey, at 10 o'clock, you can't serve alcohol because we don't want you together, maybe we should think through the rest of it. And I'm not saying close down the backwoods. Let's look at the reality of it. If people are at the bar till midnight, it's probably safer than having people go home at 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. And before we go on to our next question, I'll just remind everybody in attendance on Zoom that you can pose your questions via the question and answer chat box. So our next question is, many nonprofits have been hit hard by COVID-19, particularly as fundraising events have been canceled. What will your party do to support nonprofits that provide community services? And we will start with Harwinder.
Yes, so working with nonprofits have been a passion of mine, being a caring person, and I worked with organizations like Food Bank, Socket to Poverty, and Coldest Night of the Year, and now Winter Coming. So definitely they had the hardest hit. And even during, I belong to BC Nurses Union, and the role I had recently, previously lobby coordinator, we would do these initiatives. And that's when we saw that how hardest they are hit. So being passionate about it, we do have, government's plan doesn't matter. It's me as a representative. I will be strongly advocating again and passionately putting myself up front and asking for support for nonprofits, because again, BCNDP is all about equality and socioeconomic status balance, and to lift the poor and lift the ones who are unfortunate. So we will be trying our best to support nonprofit organizations, whether it's in a form of food or funding or money. And I, at the personal level, will be the upfront championing that initiative, because as I mentioned, this is something I've been doing for a long time. And this is the group of population that they need our help the most. And they can count on my support. And regardless of the election results, I will be there. And if I get to be the MLA for this region, I will take the lead to get the support for our nonprofit organizations for sure.
Thank you, Harwinder. Kelly?
Hello, yes. Well, I have been on a number of nonprofits and know how difficult fundraising can be at the best of times. With something like this, I believe that the Guaranteed Livable Income Plan of the BC Greens will, hopefully alleviate some of the need for certain nonprofits anyway, food banks and, some of the mental health supports that we've got to help people get into affordable housing, or at least give them a springboard to come off of. When you give people, and when people are provided with those basic supports, it gives us a platform to start from. So when you're worried about whether or not you can have food on the table, or whether or not you are suffering from a particular illness or disease, when we lift, a rising tide carries all ships. When we lift the bottom up, then we're all better able to support nonprofits in terms of fundraising, increasing technology so that we can do things like this and hold events online. So increasing our internet capabilities, and I'm happy to work with nonprofits on any creative ways that we can help them get through this.
Thank you, Kelly. Kyle?
Well, the BC Conservatives, we have a plan to work with the valuable not-for-profit organizations under a policy-based systematic approach and approvals. We'd like to move away from the current system of cash giveaways. We'd like to help these people get back on their feet. And I'll tell you, this COVID-19 stuff is making it difficult for businesses and not-for-profits equally to operate. I think that we need to really start looking at this second wave, the notion that it might be coming, because if you look at Wuhan and the rest of China that led this, they're 90 days ahead of us to 120 days, and they still haven't had their second wave, but we're saying we're getting one here. Even though we're testing 44,000 people across this country every day in comparison to 12,000 people every day, and we're still only finding about 1,000 people who have an infection. So I think that maybe it's time for our government to look at all these regulations and restrictions and increase gatherings from 50 to 200 people, see what we can do realistically without increasing the risk to public health and safety. Because we know people who have predisposition medical issues, they're more inclined to suffer greatly from this. Maybe we can separate them from these events, but it's time to start thinking about getting back to normal, getting back to business, and helping these programs before they disappear. Because without the public and the human interaction, it's going to be hard for these Zoom-style meetings to get that money, to get that interaction, to get at people's heartstrings. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. And over to you, Eric.
Thanks, Dan. Well, as I said in my opening remarks, over the last 11 years, and certainly prior to that when I was in local government, my wife and I probably attended, I'm going to be at least 2 to 3 fundraisers a month. Seemed like every weekend there was 1 or 2. Some nights we went to 2. She went to one, I went to another. And these organizations, of course, so since March, there haven't been any. We've done some online. We've taken part in some of the charity auctions and so on online. But well, just as an example, the Chamber's Business Awards, which we've attended for years here in Vernon, there's not going to be the awards. There's not going to be the raffles. And it's cost $15 to go online. So, I mean, that's the Chamber's big fundraiser for the year. That's not going to happen. One of the things I think that would be innovative, the majority of money that goes out to not-for-profits, unless they're doing a specific contract for government, comes from gaming. A tremendous amount of money goes out every year to the not-for-profits from gaming. But not-for-profits are required to put up a certain percentage of their own money, and then if they qualify, get the remainder from gaming. And there may be an opportunity to lower that threshold a little bit, so that not-for-profits could get a bigger percentage of what they needed. Because if they don't have the 20% to put down, if you will, like you would on a mortgage, they can't access the rest of the money. So that may be one opportunity. Gaming money, other than the casino money, of course, which is non-existent, and local governments will, thanks Dan, will know that because they're not getting the big checks from the casinos this year. But other than that, the gaming money has still been coming in on the lottery tickets and so on. So that's just one idea that. But as Harinder said,
thank you, Eric.
Individuals who can afford to go need to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next question. As protecting the environment and stimulating tourism are vital to the region, will you support efforts to identify partnerships that lead to the expansion of Ellison Park? And we will start with Kelly.
Yeah, yes, obviously anything to increase our access to nature and connection to the land, I am in support of. I saw this issue pop up quite early on when that land became available. And I know that our campsites are always full. And even this summer, you know, it was probably quite nice for people to experience our campgrounds just for locals and do staycations, and we get to discover these beautiful places. I mean, we live in paradise, let's face it. So yes, I would be supportive of that and work towards partnerships to make that happen. I think it's crucial to connect with nature and start to see ourselves as part of nature as well.
Thank you, Kelly. Over to you, Kyle.
As far as the BC Conservative Party is, we encourage the growth of our green spaces. Personally, my opinion on this issue is it would probably be good for this community. I would like to see it, if it were pursued, to be done responsibly, because we know that that park would increasing the size of that park is going to increase the amount of traffic going that way, and we're all familiar with the road and how close a lot of homes are to it. So if the infrastructure could support the increased traffic, maybe it's an idea, but we have to be responsible not only to our environment, but to the citizens of Vernon. And that's a pretty, not only environmentally sensitive area, but sensitive area when it comes to population being close to our transportation infrastructure. So if the consultation with the communities came through, I would definitely support it. But if the communities were hesitant to it, I'd definitely have to rethink that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Eric?
Thanks, Dan. Well, when this property first came up for sale, I was intrigued on several levels. I know the city of Vernon sent a letter to the Minister of Environment asking them to put up the $16 million and buy the land. And the minister's response was, we don't have $16 million. And in fairness, there isn't a whole lot of money around right now when you're looking at running a $12 billion operating deficit. But having said that, I met with the regional district chair and administrator, and we, came up with, I think, some innovative ideas to, and I quote Kelly, to partner. This needs to be a partnership. The province is not going to put up $16 million to buy that piece of land without some sort of partnership. Where the regional district, the Parks and Rec, Greater Vernon Parks and Rec through the regional district would agree to develop the park over the years. One of the things that, we're looking at Cal Park and the grasslands in the backcountry there, it's getting overused. There's people are, they're hiking, they're not dirt biking or anything in there, but it's getting crowded. This is a huge piece of land that could be utilized, both, as Kelly said, for campgrounds. I really like the idea of having more public access to the lake, because if that property is sold privately, all of those good lake access lanes will be gone. And we have very, very few areas where the public can access the lake. So I think it's a great idea. We think we need as a community to come up with some really innovative ideas so that we can move it forward. And I promise you that if I'm elected and we're in government, will be one of my first trips to the Ministry of Agriculture and Parks office. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Harwinder?
Yes, so tourism, as we all know, that it is the backbone of our economy in the Okanagan, and it does bring us a lot of revenue. So what better way for us to showcase our beauty and nature and to connect our children with the nature by having this expansion and having this, initiative and project. As I would like to correct Mr. Foster, yes, there is a 12 billion deficit, but that's due to pandemic, and BCNDP successfully presented 3 balanced budgets. So 12 billion is still quite a lot less than 77.7 billion budget that was reflected in BC Liberals' February 20,000 budget. So I'm sure we will find that money from the government if we advocate for a region. And if it can be done with the partnership, that will be even phenomenal. So I will strongly support this initiative.
Thank you, Harwinder. We will be moving on to questions from our audience. And we have one here. Would you support your party in cooperating with another party to form a coalition government or avoid vote splitting? And we will ask that beginning with Kyle.
My personal opinion on this is at this point in history with COVID-19, with everything else that's been going on in the last 8 months, I think British Columbians would benefit from a minority government. If there is a vote split in British Columbia, and it's a small party that holds the balance of power, if it's a Conservative party, I believe we'll do a lot better than the Greens did with the NDP. We'll make sure that any new measures, any new thing, anything they want to pass coming down the line here for this anticipated second wave would be held to account. It would also be great for businesses in the recovery, depending if the Liberals get in with their wanting to slash the PST for a year. Where's that money going to come from? Because again, taxpayer funded is taxpayer funded, and when you stop funding with taxpayer dollars, you need to stop funding other programs. So supporting a coalition government, yes, I think as long as we have a strong enough voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Eric?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Well, we tried to form a coalition with the Greens in 2017, which didn't work out so well for us. But if there is a minority situation, it's either form a coalition or be in another election in a month. So we would, most definitely form a coalition. And I mean, we didn't like it much because we were in government, but it worked well between the Greens and the NDP for them, and for the smooth operation of Parliament. The downside of it was the deal was, it was the Casa agreement. The Greens were supposed to be able to vote the way they wanted on other than confidence issues and budget issues, and that went along fine until the Greens actually disagreed with the government, and they threw a snit and called an election. So form a coalition, absolutely, no question.
Thank you, Eric. Harwinder?
Yes, I see the value in working in collaboration, and John Horgan and Dr. Andrew Weaver have set a good example, and they've accomplished lots. I always believe, as many of you probably witnessed in my debates during my federal election, I do not have any issue, or I don't even not think for a split second when it comes to praise, even if it's the other party, what's done right. And I do not hesitate to take accountability what was done wrong by the party I support or I run for. So I believe when it comes for people's betterment, we should always put our ego and political stripes aside and move forward collaboratively to work for the people. And I never or do not have ego issues at all. And so I don't see any problem. Working collaboratively in a collaboration, splitting vote, yes, it does hurt with our Vernon Monashee writing. If you look at the progressive vote, it's always more. And if that vote was combined, then we would have had the much needed change in the past, in the decades. So that's where, yes, but again, it depends. And I'm proud to know every time after every election results that Vernon is much more progressive in thinking. Vote splitting, again, our strategic vote, I don't think there is such thing. People should vote for who they want to. And, that's a real democracy. Working in collaboration, I'm always in for it because, again, it's all about people and it's about their betterment and their future. If that makes it better, then why not?
Thank you, Harwinder. Kelly?
Yes, obviously the Greens are always happy to collaborate. We support good policy wherever that comes from. We try to bring forward good policy. As far as the Greens were concerned, the CASA was working quite well. So, being called into this snap election at an unnecessary time certainly was surprising and not necessarily the right thing to do for democracy. But here we are. And if we had had proportional representation, then we would get a really good sense of what people really wanted. It's nice to have 4 candidates in this election, in this riding, so that we can get a true sense. People don't need to worry about a strategy. I question the strategy always when that question comes up. The strategy should be forming the best government that we can, supporting the strongest ideas that come forward. So, we had 20,000 people in this riding that just didn't vote, that didn't feel that any candidate or party communicated to them in a way that they felt strong enough to go vote. I believe if those people did go to the polls this time, you might find a very, very different result. I believe that we are a green riding. I believe at the heart of it, we are, nature loving outdoors people that value health and clean air and fresh water to swim in and paddleboard on and do all the fun summer and winter sports. In terms of a coalition, I like the agreement that we had. Like I said, I think it was working well. I think John Horgan may be surprised that he may have to work with more Greens in the next government. So I encourage you to make that vote heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. How's everybody doing? You hanging in there? Next question. With aging parents on limited income, I am concerned at the lack of necessary healthcare supports for items like hearing aids, etc. Is your party taking any steps to ease the burden on our seniors for items vital to their quality of life, but not currently supported through our healthcare system? And we will start with Eric.
Thank you, Dan. Well, we made some significant, or Andrew Wilkinson made some significant announcements the other day in regarding to seniors care and healthcare. One being for seniors who are able to still live in their own home but need help, up to a $7,000 tax credit to help offset the cost of help in your home. Several $1 billion over the next 5 years to refit care homes for single occupancy rooms, which is a big deal. We saw that this time in the COVID. The removal of the PST, of course, for the next while will certainly help in the cost of anything that we buy. I also, think that we should really be looking at a PST on any kind of healthcare, be it, equipment or hearing aids or dental work or whatever it is, for everyone, not only seniors. And seniors who have a lower income, and in some cases, certainly for pharmacare and that sort of thing, but for hearing aids and glasses and medical needs, do get help from the province. And this is another case where we probably need to look at the threshold for that. Sometimes the income thresholds are a little high. We need to lower them a little bit, so that, they're a little low. We need to raise them a little bit, so that people, with a fixed income, especially people living on a very modest fixed income, seniors have more access to help from the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Over to Harwinder.
Yes, what a wonderful question from Advocate for Seniors Care. Yes, so we have, there's no secret that seniors and their care and needs and resources were neglected under BC Liberals government. 16 years of neglect and lots got privatized. And I think question is more focused on hearing aids and the things that seniors rely on. Absolutely. Because a lot of them, whether it's Lifeline, those bands we send people with, and a lot of them can't afford. And I have seen the sadness, oftentimes working in hospitals, sometimes seniors, they often have dementia or short-term memory loss, and they put their hearing aid and it's lost in a meal tray and it goes, or sometimes it ended up in laundry. I do see the sadness and the helplessness and the worry that how will I afford new ones? So that's those are the reasons, many of the reasons I am stepping in to be in the politics to advocate for those resources, absolutely, as it'll be my priority. Yes, it is a part of your health, and it is the necessity in order for you to hear. And whether it comes to glasses too, I think we should expand it further. And I would absolutely be advocating from bottom of my heart to get the things that our seniors need and deserve. Because again, somebody might say it's our tax dollars. No, they contributed all their life. They paid large amount of taxes, and now it's our turn to look after them and not penny pinching. Thank you.
Thank you, Harwinder. Kelly.
Thank you. Not to sound like a broken record, but the guaranteed livable income or the universal basic income proposal, it doesn't make a difference your age. So it's an idea that crosses all sorts of barriers and divides. So providing people with a basic income to handle whatever expenses come up and not have to worry about those is something that we would be supportive. So not only specific to seniors, but it would certainly help that situation. We had also made some announcements earlier in the week about switching our seniors care instead of being a for-profit model, switching that to a mix of public and not-for-profit and community-based services and co-ops. So, when you tie profit to seniors care, I think there's some gaps that happen there, and you end up giving a lower quality of service because your motivation is profit. So I think we need to take that profit model out of seniors care. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And Kyle.
So the BC Conservative Party wants to ensure that healthcare funding is focused on the best interest of patients and patient care above all other interests. And that would include hearing. Myself, I'm hearing impaired in my left ear. I know what it's like to be without a hearing aid. It's very difficult to have conversations as a politician in large rooms with many people behind you. That being said, I would just like to point out that if we were to move to a universal basic income style system, or CERB, as we've been doing for the last 6 months, what you're going to do is drive the costs of these medical care, of these devices up, and everything else associated with healthcare is also going to be driven up because we're driving the value of our dollar down with the universal basic income. Standard economics, I mean, we are where we are right now. We could probably use it in a better way, but that's not the answer. The answer would be to recognize that there's an increasing burden from these chronic illnesses, which would be hearing loss, and that if we could take care of our seniors by providing them with the necessities they deserve above all, I mean, they've paid in the most into our society, as Harwinder pointed out, it would be a great benefit to everybody. But I definitely, I would advise against this universal basic income economically, because we can see the stagflation that has ensued in the last 6 months. I know personally within my own economic circle, a lot of small businesses are having a hard time retaining employees, even getting employees, and they're driving their prices up to a point where our seniors aren't going to benefit from it at all. Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle. Moving on to our next question. Our current legislative assembly is led by a coalition of 2 parties. Given that coalition has worked reasonably well, even in these difficult times, what is your opinion on reopening the discussion on voting reform, i.e. proportional representation? Sorry, we will start with Harwinder.
Yes, so I am always in favor, openly in favor in proportional representation. Again, many ridings that have been historically, federally or provincially been same old, and that's why problems still exist decades after decades, and that's where every vote will count. I used to have the banners along with my family and some volunteers in our Kelowna and Vernon, supporting the ProRep I used to go there by Safeway or Polson Park because I do support it wholeheartedly. And I do believe that having every vote count is a real democracy. And I am openly in full support, and I'll continue supporting that, because look at the Scandinavian nations, they have it, and they are the least corrupt, or there's barely any corruption, and they have the excellent public services, because everybody's opinion matters, and you cannot go with ego, and you cannot take writings for granted and think that I don't have to accomplish much, and whether the other parties or the candidates work for every single vote, and sometimes the same rhetoric, whether it's the propaganda, bashing other parties, or making these gossips and rumors that this party did this 40 years ago, and I think that shouldn't win. Democracy should win, and every vote matters. That's when we'll get the perfect solutions, which will leave nobody behind.
Thank you, Harwinder. Kelly?
Welcome.
Yes, so Greens are always supportive of proportional representation. It is something that we have campaigned on for years. The decision to go proportional should be nonpartisan, and governments around the world that are using a system like this, as Harwinder was saying, have been successful. What I like about this idea is that it forces consensus building. So the best ideas should rise to the top. So it better represents our communities in that the current system, as Harwinder was saying earlier, we do have a more progressive riding than our results would suggest. So something with a proportional type system would help that. I mean, it's very interesting that the Prime Minister of Canada proclaimed that it would be the last unfair election 4 years ago. And, once he was in with the traditional model, changed the tune very quickly. So it must benefit the sort of traditional parties, I suppose. But we're in a period now where we need to better represent the communities and the variety of opinions that are out there. And certainly, when you're bringing in something like the climate change, we need to work together. We're all in it together. We all live on the same planet. So it doesn't make sense for us to not come to a consensus about protecting the place that we live. So thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Over to you, Kyle.
I'm always confused when the Greens and the NDPs are saying that this is the ultimate in democracy, or this is true democracy. There's many forms of democracy. This is one. The other form of democracy was the referendum that the people of British Columbia unanimously voted no. The people said no to proportional representation. It's not up to me, you or the politicians. Pardon?
That was not unanimous. No, the bar was.
It was a democratic vote, and it's not your ideal version of democracy, but it is our version of democracy. It's our new Westminster democracy. So a majority rule said that no PR. The other thing that we want to look at is we're saying that PR would not benefit the rich. It wouldn't benefit these long-term standing governments, et cetera, et cetera. It would bring more voices to the table. If that's true, how come Israel's been underneath the same government for over 20 years and it's got PR, right? The other thing, we'll always bring up Scandinavian countries, Latvia, Lithuania, and other small 3 million, 2 million people democracies. Their proportional representation, it might work because of their regions, but I mean, we're talking about a region the size of the Okanagan, not a region the size of British Columbia. And as far as the demographic in our region, it's the largest conservative riding if you're looking at the federal riding in Western Canada, if not Canada. As far as votes are concerned, there's 46,000 conservatives who voted here, and many of them were from the Vernon area. There's indications that we conservatives are not for the environment, et cetera, et cetera. That's also not true. I think conservatives are more conservative to the environment than the Greens. And I would have to say, if you look at my election signs and the Green election signs, I use 1/4 the lumber that they use. It's 1/4 the cost, it's 1/4 the natural resources, and I'm a conservative. So proportional representation, it's left up to the people. If you believe in true democracy, PR isn't the only democracy. If you want to get out of the current democracy, convince the majority. This is the
Thank you,
democratic
Kyle.
system we're in. Thanks.
And Eric, over to you.
Thanks, Dan. And this may never happen again, but to quote Dr. Weaver, after the proportional representation vote, when asked if he would pursue it in the future, and his quote was, "The ship has sailed." We've had, this is the third proportional representation vote in all different manners that we've had. This one was set, it should have been set for a yes vote. I mean, it was maneuvered and pushed and twisted, and still over 60% of the people voted against it. So the people in this province don't want proportional representation. Some do. Obviously 35% did, but 65 didn't. And as Kyle said, that's the majority. That's the majority of the people. That's more a higher percentage of people that voted than you would need to change the Constitution in a lot of not-for-profits and clubs and so on. So again, like I say, that ship sailed, and I don't think we're going to see it back on the ballot question for some years to come. Thank you.
Can I
Thank
rebut?
you, Eric. Yeah, Kelly, you would like to have a rebuttal?
Yeah, I just want to say with this idea of majority rules, the majority of people did not vote for Mr. Foster in the last election. So I think that point is slightly moot. More people voted for a combination of the Greens and the NDP, which is what they got, which is great. We have worked well together and we agree on a lot of things. But the current system is not the fair system. It was less than half of the people in the riding that voted in the Liberals in this riding. So just to be clear. Thank you.
Hello?
I'm on mute. Harwinder, over to you.
Yes, so little rebut as well. We shouldn't forget about the younger generation, Gen Zs. My daughter just turned 18 and she'll be able to vote this year, and many of her friends and many friends at UBCO. So she's quite keen about not just Canadian politics and US too, besides pursuing her pre-medical school. This generation, Gen Zs, they're all, they support pro-representation. So I don't know what's the threat. We should always keep the options open. And we shouldn't say, oh, it's done, it wouldn't. So again, thinking outside the box and having all the options open and making our youngsters feel that your opinion also matters. So it wouldn't be same old for too long. And our youth that's where my hope is, whether it comes to environment or pro-rep or any other fair legislations.
Thank you, Harwinder. Kyle, did I see that you would like your rebuttal as well?
Yes, please. I think that in hearing what Kelly just said, I would have to say, I mean, if that's the case, the Green Party and the NDP are no different. If we're looking to just gain the power of your ideas, maybe one candidate or the other candidate could step aside and we could truly see if this riding is as progressive as it's claimed to be. Thanks.
Can I rebut again?
Hey, Kelly, yeah, this will be the last one. You get two. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's not for us to decide. It's for the voters to decide. So they have a clear choice. And I could say the same about yourself and Mr. Foster. If one of you would step aside, it might change the situation. So, goose and gander.
Eric, I saw your hand up next.
Thank you very much, Dan. Just to the youth, the 18 to 30-year-olds, 18 to 35-year-olds even, traditionally haven't been a strong voting group. And we all, I think everybody up on the screen, encourage them to get out and vote because they are the future of the province, as Harinder said. But at this time, and as Kyle said, the majority of the people in this province did not vote for pro-rep. And so and any government can bring it back. If the Conservative Conservative Party wins in Ottawa the next time, they can bring it to the table. The federal Liberals. And if the NDP Green form a coalition next week or next month, then they can bring it back to the table again. There's nothing stopping anybody from doing it. I just think that it's gone to the electorate 3 times in the last 12 years, and it's been defeated every time. And I just don't see it as being viable. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And Harwinder, did you want to have your second rebuttal?
Yes, just a quick one. So again, having more candidates is more choice for people to choose their candidates from. And again, kudos to all of you putting your name forward, and let the voters choose who they think will best represent their interest. And I really urge our Gen Zs and all the people who haven't voted or who are sitting at the fence, please go vote, because a lot of people, like minorities or racially marginalized people like myself or our ancestors, had to fight to get this right to vote. And women, even in Canada. So please, I would encourage you all, you have 4 choices, more the merrier. Go pick your best choice, who you think will best represent you. And on October 24, please go vote. And October 16 is advanced polling. Thank you.
Thank you, Harwinder. We're looking at 7:30, so a half hour to go. Still a number of questions to get through. And then we will have closing statements. So our next question starts, I am a high school student here in Vernon, and I'm here tonight to ask a question of our candidates. The climate crisis is undeniably bearing down on us. There still exists, however, a slim window of time where we can act to prevent complete climate breakdown. If elected, what steps will you take to fight for true and meaningful climate justice? And we will start with Kelly.
Thank you. Well, we obviously, this is our main concern. This is why I'm running. I'm running for my son, for his generation. As I said in my opening statement, none of the other parties are taking this seriously enough, and it needs to be the lens that we look through everything at. First of all, on a provincial level, we would halt Site C. This is a project that has gone into horrendous cost overruns. It was, originally scheduled, I think, to be $6 billion. It's over 10. There are structural deficiencies. And so we would put a halt to that program. This was also put into place to help fund the LNG project, which also is climate disaster. There's fugitive methane emissions from that. There are definitely health implications for that. Obviously, we'll never reach our Paris climate goals or targets if we continue down that road. We need to decentralize and focus on renewable energy. First of all, we need to look at regenerative agriculture. We need to slow down on all of our travel, encourage things like electrifying the automobile fleet, looking at better electrical public transit. There's an idea floating around the Okanagan for an electric rail passage to connect from all the way down to Osoyoos up to Kamloops. I would love to support something like that. There's tons of jobs in a project like that, and it's actually cheaper than continuing to build new roads. Obviously, tree planting, biodiversity, supporting an immediate halt to logging of old growth forests. I could probably go on and on for more than 20 seconds, but this is my passion. This is why I'm running. So if you care about this issue, then you need to vote green. This is your only choice. So thank you for the question. It's an excellent one and absolutely needed.
Thank you, Kelly. Kyle.
Thank you. So in regards to climate change, it's actually near and dear to my heart too, believe it or not. I just don't think we're going about the solutions in the correct manner. And I agree with the BC Conservative Party platform when it says get rid of the taxation policy on greenhouse gases and start with regulations. Where we've seen this successful in history is 1994, diesel engines were regulated to have an EGR system. In 2007, they were regulated to have a DEF system. And in 2010, they went to Blue DEF, which was adding urea to it. what these systems do is regenerate or reuse regenerable gases or inert gases like CO2 by adding more fuel and another combustible substance to them and reigniting them until the exhaust is clean. We didn't tax that into existence, we legislated that into existence. This notion of building a green new future electric cars, they're way worse for the environment than an internal combustion engine that does 140 horsepower, is made out of aluminum, is going to last you 20 years if you're smart with it, will ever be. Look at the Toyota Camrys that are still running around from the 90s on our roads here in BC. You want to build electric rail? That's fine. Do you got the money behind it? Is there demand in the market, or are we going to subsidize this like we subsidize the oil fields? If we want to get off the oil subsidies, we shouldn't be going into electric energy subsidies either. You want to talk about electric cars like Tesla, $100,000 for a Tesla, or you can get a small Nissan Leaf for what, $49,000? How many baby boomers, or sorry, how many Gen X and Gen Zs are going to have money for a $50,000 car the size of a Suzuki Swift? This is all going to increase in price. Like Kelly shared this week, the school buses, $330,000 versus $130,000. Why are we paying for these school buses? It's brand new technology. My uncle owned a trucking company up north. They would give him a truck every year to do research and development. Give us 6 school buses for free, and we'll tell you how they worked out over the next 4 years. But we shouldn't be subsidizing our way in to build new infrastructure that's going to be harsh on the environment as well. Let's regulate. Let's stop taxing. Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle. Eric.
Thanks, Dan. Well, BC Liberals were the first jurisdiction in North America to bring in a carbon tax to reduce the carbon emissions. And it was a tax neutral, revenue neutral tax, and it worked. What we took in, we reduced other taxes with it. And it did. We did see the use of fossil fuels go down. We also initiated the subsidies and rebates on electric cars, and we saw the number of electric cars being used on the road, especially in the city. If you go to Vancouver, where there's, they don't have to drive too far, and the technology really hasn't caught up to living in rural BC yet, but it will. It's much better now than it was 10 years ago. So we were ahead of the curve on this in BC. We continue to certainly support it. As Kelly says, planting trees. We're planting more trees over the last number of years. Companies are forced to plant trees. They can't, in the past, they were able to just log areas, complain they couldn't afford to plant the trees and go on to the next area. Whereas now, you don't plant the trees, you don't get to go to the next area. So the BC Liberal government over the last number of years have brought in quite a few opportunities for improvements in climate and carbon control, carbon emission control. Might not be moving quite as fast as the Greens would like to see it move, but we certainly have made inroads. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And Harwinder.
Yes, so as I briefly mentioned in my opening speech, Clean BC plan, the BC NDP's climate plan is one of the robust plan in North America, which was developed with George Heyman. He's an environmentalist MLA with Dr. Andrew Weaver, former Green Party leader. And we are committed to actually legislate requiring BC to reach net zero by 2050. And I know Greens are saying it's 2050 is too long, but we are also committed to reduce emission 40% by 2030, because we all know that it'll be a gradual transition. We do not support the gradual means ignoring. It is that it is a robust plan. We will go accordingly. It's developed with those very keen people. And we have already, BC NDP planted 300 million trees just in 1 year in order to help with that. And we are launching more electric school buses. Even Vernon will be getting some, and transit, and invest in made in BC carbon capture technology, where British Columbian entrepreneurs have already started the research and development work to prevent carbon emission. There are options to reduce the carbon footprints. We just need to acknowledge the climate crisis is a real thing, and because I do care. I have 3 children, ages 18, 13, and almost 5, so I do want to leave healthy planet for them. what the BCNDP's plan is, it's created in a way that nobody's left behind and that everybody's work and their concerns are acknowledged. Yes, a project like Site C that was initiated by Christy Clark, to the point that there was no coming back and $4 billion were already wasted and fracking. So we had utilities commission.
Thank you, Harwinder. Appreciate it. So we've got time for maybe 1 to 2 more questions before closing statements. Next question. What will you do as an individual to support those youth suffering from developmental disabilities that are falling through the cracks due to lack of resources? And we will start with Kyle.
BC Conservative Party recognizes that healthcare, the needs of people in healthcare have changed over the last 20 years, and the government has not kept up. So what we would like to do is review, like I've been saying, with our healthcare policy, make sure that we're putting in a rigorous system that isn't letting people with mental disabilities, with other disabilities fall through the crack. It's not, I don't think it's about one specific group. I honestly think in going out in the community and being in my job, I meet a lot of people who do need help with health. I'm a mover, people who have health problems can't move themselves. So I get to meet a lot of people with these issues. They're all facing problems in British Columbia. It's not just one group or another. And I think it's because we haven't really focused on healthcare as centered in one community or another community. We just have a blanket policy. This is a good program, put it in. Well, it might work in Vancouver, but it's not working in Vernon kind of deal. So again, the BC Conservative Party, we recognize that there's an issue in delivering healthcare across for all our citizens. And we would try to encourage the sitting government of the day to reform how they administer healthcare to make it more, make sure that our healthcare dollars are being used better. Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle. Over to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Dan. Youth mental health is a huge issue. I've certainly met in my office with parents, psychiatrists, psychologists, youth mental health workers, and there are a tremendous number of challenges. And one of the big ones that we're trying to overcome is the sharing of information. And I had a meeting, several meetings with one of the youth psychiatrists at the hospital. And when a youth was finished at the hospital, they'd done everything they needed to do there, and then they needed to move on to youth mental health, and as outpatients and to the clinics and so on. They couldn't share files with them. They couldn't. It just so what happens is that they do a great job at the hospital, and then the folks in the outreach clinics and so on also do a good job if they can actually all get together and do the work. So that is one of the big challenges, and there's always money challenges. It's you just you're trying to get. Somebody said one time, well, government has the money, it's about choices. And everything the government does, any government, every single day is about choices. And, youth with mental health issues may be the most vulnerable people in our society. We need to invest more in them, but we need to invest it correctly. As Kyle said, spend the money smartly. And somehow we've got to get over this business of people in the healthcare business, with any kind of healthcare business, but not being able to share information because of privacy issues and so on. It's just huge. It's a court thing. Thank you. And in order to manage the files and the problems that these youth have, we have to be able to put a team at the table to share all the information they have. And I think that would be the single biggest thing we could do, and it would save it a lot of money.
Thank you, Eric. Over to you, Harwinder.
Yes, again, it's working with people every day and hundreds of people. And yes, we do come across adult or children with developmentally delayed issues. But right now, that's when I support the BCNDP, because they're all for increasing public healthcare services. So we are committed to train many more, 7,000 more healthcare providers, and opening a more urgent care centers as well, also support, but developmentally delayed adults and children, I do see that there's certain, whether it's people with disabilities, I question why are they always the last priority, no matter which government it is. And that's when my advocacy, every nurse, when you're a nurse, you're always advocating, whether it's at the health authority levels or government levels. So I will be strongly advocating. And again, when you have a science behind it, experience, and many stories to share with the stakeholders and the government, then then you can justify your case, and then you can get more resources. So I'll be certainly advocating to bring more resources, first meeting with the people and families that where are we falling short. And as I said, BCNDP have made great investments, and it is work in progress. And I'll be proud to support this group of people because I'm quite passionate about it, to bring permanent solutions, not Band-Aid fixes. I never favor Band-Aid fixes because we do end up spending more money on little patchwork. If we are proactive with whatever solution we bring in, that's when we will save money by supporting, and it's supporting in any way we can, and supporting their families as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Harwinder. Kelly?
Could I get you to repeat the question for me, Dan? I just want to make sure that I've understood it.
Yeah, of course. What will you do as an individual to support those youth suffering from developmental disabilities that are falling through the cracks due to lack of resources?
Right. This goes back to our strategy that I discussed earlier about the investment in community-based initiatives for this, increasing support and funding for healthcare workers, increasing support for families, even looking at, things like flexible work options for parents. We're looking at the concept of a 4-day work week, which might free up a little bit more time for parents to spend with their children. And obviously just, funding healthcare workers and the professionals that know how to deal with these things. It's something that I need to learn more about, to be honest. And I know that's not a phrase you hear often out of a politician, but I'm open to ideas, and I will listen to professionals. As I've mentioned before, we're an evidence-based party, and so I will follow the evidence.
Thank you. Looking at the time, I think we have time for maybe one more question before closing statements. So the question to you is, as the next MLA, what will you do to make sure that your constituents' concerns are heard locally in Victoria, whether or not your party is in government? And we start with you, Eric.
Well, thanks, Dan. So I've been on both sides of the House over the 11 years that I've been in Victoria. I can honestly say it's a lot easier to get your views heard when you're in government because you can just walk down the hall and go into the minister's office. But the best way to describe it, especially when you're in opposition, it's hard to get the message across sometimes. I'd like to call the minister's office and see if I can sit down with them because you can get things done if you don't stand up in the House and try to embarrass people. But sometimes that's all there is. There's nothing else you can do. You bring it up in question period and go after the minister. I found that we've had several issues here in the riding over the last 3.5 years that I was able to be effective by sitting down with the minister and laying out the situation, and they didn't have to dig their heels in. So that's been my method over the last number of years, both while I was in government certainly and in an opposition, because as much as we stand up in the House and rail on each other and so on, for the most part, people are there to get the job done and do it the best they can for the province. So I found that I was most successful when I was able to sit down with the minister and have that discussion. Sometimes that didn't work. We had to bring it up in the House in question period, but reasonable conversations usually get things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Harwinder?
Yes, this is one of the reasons I stepped in, because it is really hard sometimes I'm still waiting for a meeting with Mr. Foster 3.5 years ago, actually, day before yesterday. I was going through those emails. They're still in my inbox, and I called multiple times. All I wanted 15 to 30 minutes to address several healthcare issues. And I emailed as a constituent, as a nurse. I did not or never mention my political stripe, and I don't know if they were aware, the office was aware. And all those emails are still there, and it was very disheartening. And for that, I am always in, and I will be, you can take my word for it, and I will be fairly representing you all. I think that's what the elected official should do, because they're getting paid on taxpayers' time. And it is democracy. It's okay if people didn't vote for you or for me. It's their right. It's my duty, my job to fairly and equally represent every single constituent, regardless of their political stripe. And I must admit one thing, I highly respect Mr. Mel Arnold. Actually, he took the time to meet me regarding the same issues, whether he didn't get the chance to speak about healthcare issues in Ottawa, but at least it was very reassuring. And as I said, I am a person who doesn't hesitate to praise, even if it was in my party, what was done right. And I'm not complaining, but I'm disheartened. And that's why I thought people shouldn't have to wait for 3.5 or 4 years or beg back and forth to meet regarding the pledge that your MLA signed, that this initiative I'll support, but then we only see, it shouldn't be that way that you only see representatives around election doing photo ops. They should be available. So I will be available all year round. You can find me in farmers market, in parks, arena with my kids, and that's the type
Thank
of
you,
thing.
Howard. Eric, you would like a rebuttal? For sure.
Yes, and I went through those emails as well the other day, and I did respond to your emails. And I take great offense to you saying that I only show up for election times. I've never seen you at a fundraising event. I've never seen you downtown. I've never seen you at the farmers market. And now you've had your 2 times. We go to events every single weekend, every event that's on. We'd be at the Chamber of Commerce fundraisers, the gala, Cal Rotary auction, the Bollywood, always supported it. And so, and it goes on and on and on. Kindale, Canadian Mental Health, all the fundraising efforts, all the initiatives. I meet with those folks all the time. So for you to say that I show up at election time only, you better talk to some of the people that actually go to these events, because if I get a comment more than any other, it's you, and speaking to my wife and I, do you ever stay home on the weekend? Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Over to you, Kelly.
Thank you. You know, there's certainly some issues where there has been a perception of a missing MLA, and I have also sent an email about an issue that I found important. We've got some road names around these parts that are quite derogatory towards First Nations women, and I think they need to be changed. Those emails had been ignored. The Stickle Road issue, that was an issue in the last election. You know, there was a public consultation done on that issue. Unfortunately, it was ignored. You know, we have a very unsafe crossing to the hospital, and I am on social media and listening to constituents and community members all the time complaining about when, you know, what will it take before something is done about that intersection? It is not safe. I want to protect the nurses that are trying to get to work. I want to protect the people that are trying to get to the hospital safely. There's got to be something that can be done about that intersection. In terms of how I will be in government, you know, you need to be persuasive. You need to be able to talk to people and be communicative and open-minded, and you know, be able to respectfully disagree with people and try to come to a solution together. So that's how I intend to be in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And over to you, Kyle.
Thanks, Dan. So in regards to working in the legislature, myself, I've been a hustler and a businessman my entire life. I hustle every day, and it means dealing with people in the States to buy stuff, maybe shipping stuff over to Europe, et cetera, people from all over the world have different attitudes. So I can read people very well when you get into a room. I know what to kind of expect when you sit down. And that's what I could bring to this government. If we were to vote a Conservative candidate in this riding and I were to go into the legislature building in a minority government situation, I would be able to have those hard conversations that Eric was talking about, sit down and maybe even convince somebody who I might have to stand up against in the House to go out for dinner with me and see it my way after all. You know, it's just, it's my way. It's just talk people over, talk them in smooth and make sure that we're doing the best for the community. We're doing the best for the business here. That's how I always make sure that I look out for my best interests in my business. If you make me the leader of this community in the legislature, I'll make sure that I look out for your best interests without having to embarrass too many people, because I believe in backroom politics in a positive manner, not going against the people, but making sure that if we have a minority government, I'm not out there on the floor being that jerk. I'm the guy sitting down in the room. Hey, you know what? Every time Kyle walks in the room, we want to talk to him because he's not giving us any grief on the floor. That's the kind of guy I would be for you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle. And that concludes the questions, and we'll move into closing statements. We will go in reverse order from where we started for our opening statements, and you will have 2 minutes, starting with Kelly.
Thank you. First of all, as much as we may not agree on everything here tonight, I do appreciate all of you putting your name forward. It's been a wild couple of weeks, I'm sure, for all of you as well as for me. And so good for you for stepping up to the plate and bringing what you've got. It takes a lot of courage. So good job. You know, I didn't expect to be in an election right now, like most of you. I've really sensed the frustration in the community about the decision to call an election. We have been experiencing a tremendous amount of support and donations and volunteers on the Green team this time around, unlike before. So I really feel like there's a shift in people's intentions in this election. The Liberals got voted out 3 years ago, and it was time for a timeout. They had not been listening to the concerns of the community. They were investing in things that we felt were the wrong way to go, and not listening to teachers in terms of class size and composition and now safety. And from the other perspective, I'm hearing a lot of NDPers that are disillusioned, and they really thought that their party would take firmer climate action. And they're seeing that not only have they not done that, they've actually been funding fossil fuel projects at a higher rate than the Liberals. The Greens see a thriving future in regeneration through adaptation and, you know, collaborating, coming together as a community to get through this and focusing on things that really matter to everyone, regardless of your age, race, gender, or anything. So I invite you to go to bcgreens.ca to find out more about our platform. Our leader has jumped to the pump. She's been the leader for about 3-4 weeks, and we have 74 candidates running across the province for the BC Greens. So I believe we are a green riding. So I hope to see that in the results on October 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Kyle.
Just like to thank everybody for coming out tonight and watching us out there on Castanet and registering with Zoom. I'm really happy to be here with everybody who's running. I'd just like to say that I wasn't going to run this election. It took quite a few phone calls and actually somebody showing up at my campaign manager's house to say, you know, we need a conservative voice in this community. And I believe that it's an honor for me to sit up here and be that conservative voice for the first time in a long time. We have 3 old parties here. We got the Liberals, the NDP, and by default, the Greens, who supported the NDP in the last few years, who have been governing this province. The anxiety in this community over COVID, the anxiety over businesses closing, and what's coming next, it's huge. And as Kelly said, there are a lot of people coming out to support this campaign. So I think in closing, what I'm going to say is thank you very much to everybody who is coming out to support the BC Conservative Party. Please take a look at our website, see if there's any policies that catch your fancy. If you're looking to volunteer or help out, give me a call. But I think you guys want to vote for something new here in Vernon Monashee, and we're the only new choice. We can bring real change to this riding, and I'll be a great set of ears and a formidable voice for you in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Eric?
Thanks, Dan. And just in case I run out of my 2 minutes, I want to thank the Chamber for putting on this event tonight. I know it's a different way to do it, but and for the BC Tree Fruit Growers for sponsoring it. So thank you very much, and thanks to the other candidates for being here. I think one of the things we need to talk to, and I know Harinder, spoke to this about tourism and tourism hospitality industry right now is in terrible condition. They are, a lot of them are just 2 steps away from closing the doors. So we proposed just yesterday removal of the 2% small business income tax and loan guarantees for the tourism industry, that we're not going to loan money. We're not going to put money out of the taxpayers, but we will for a reasonable requests for businesses that were viable prior to this last summer. We'll go to the financial institutions with them and guarantee their loans to keep them alive so they can get back into business, hopefully next summer. So it's one of the the small business things. On the mental health issue, and I ran out of time on this. One things that we put forward in our crime prevention, if you will, Safe Communities platform piece the other day, was to fund psychiatric nurses and psychiatric social workers to work with the police and not sort of stealing them from IH when they're available, but to hire them specifically to work with the police, to go to these health check calls or calls where there's been a history of mental illness, so that they're there to be the lead for the police. It's a great opportunity for us to, get some good feelings back for the police and to really help these folks that need it. And Kelly, you mentioned that your party is fact-based, and I'm not disputing that in any way, shape, or form. I would just like to say that in regards to the Stickle Pickle, we had a tremendous amount of community engagement. But in the final analysis, we went with the engineers and the science, and that's the reason that the interchange was done the way it was done. It was the recommendation of the professionals in the Ministry of Transportation. When the government changed, the project was just getting started. The Minister Trevena came up and looked at it, met with the professionals. Oh, okay, thank you.
And Harwinder.
Yes, thank you so much, the organizers, for this forum and giving us the opportunity. And thank you all the candidates. And I would like to clarify one thing. When I mentioned in my closing speech, I'll make it part of that. When I mentioned candidates and photo ops, I did not mention specified to Mr. Foster. I say it in every election as a voter, and you will see that a lot of voters. And to clarify, Mr. Foster, when I'm not at those events, you have to keep in mind, I work full-time and I'm a shift worker. I don't work Monday to Friday, except now I used to work 12 hours, sometimes 16 hours. So I come home with swollen feet, tired, achy legs, and I am still seeing different people there. So I'm always in connect with people. And whenever I'm at the event with my kids, I don't post a whole lot of pictures on the social media, but sadly you didn't recognize me at last Bollywood Bang again. Want to clarify, yes, I received one email back when I finally, 5th email said that, okay, if you can tell us yes or no, because BCNU was gonna publish the list who replied, who didn't. And then I did have a reply. And thank you so much for that reply. And I hope I still will get a chance to see you one day in person and clarify all the concerns. Again, no disrespect. I didn't mean to from you, and it's as a voter. Again, I'm very proud to present the plan that is offered by John Horgan and the BC NDP. There are 2 likely outcomes, and your vote is choice between those 2. You can choose the BC Liberals with their clear record of tax cut, for their rich friends and cuts to the services we all need. Or you can choose to keep BC moving forward with John Horgan and the BC NDP with a track record of supporting people and the services they depend on. We know that under the leadership of Premier John Horgan, BC has thrived. Before the pandemic, we had the best economy in Canada with strong job growth and best credit rating. I enjoy working with people to solve the problems. I want to use my professional knowledge and my experience to serve all the people in the Okanagan. I will be your strong voice in Victoria. I'm asking for your support and I hope you will come work with me.
Thank you, Harwinder.
To keep BC moving forward. Thank you.
Well, and that concludes our forum, a whole 2 hours. So I want to thank, again, the BC Fruit Growers Association for partnering with us. I'd like to thank our members and the attendees who joined us via Zoom and shared their questions and concerns, as well as everybody who attended on Castanet. Thank you to Castanet for streaming for us. The Chamber is proud to be able to offer these forums as an opportunity for your voices and concerns and issues to be heard. And thank you also to our candidates who joined us today for attending and for your commitment to proudly serve the Vernon Monashee Ride. So thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
we'll say goodbye to everybody.
Good
Thank
night,
you so
Everyone,
much.
be
folks.
well.
Take care.
Bye
See ya.
everyone. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.